Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our viewers and listeners all around the world, and welcome to another groundbreaking and world-famous edition of CharIN Tuesdays. There are quite a few CharIN Tuesdays still planned for this year, and we start the end of the year with a post-EU elections triplet. Just a quick note, we have all the speakers here today, which I'll introduce later with a specific question, but just to let you know that Aleksandra Klenke is here on the call, even if you cannot see her. She is with us and listening carefully and going to be contributing greatly. So just a quick move back to the intro. So following the EU elections for a new European Parliament this year, it is now for the new College of Commissioners under President Ursula von der Leyen to be confirmed. The appointment of which brings with it, of course, several questions. Are we looking at a change in political and policy direction for e-mobility? And if so, to what degree? In light of the ongoing initiatives, will we see a continued support of the implementation of the e-mobility ecosystem throughout the EU? How much will technological neutrality play a role? Will there be a strengthened approach to mitigating disparities amongst EU member states when it comes to e-mobility uptake? Are we going to see a stronger push for e-mobility beyond road transport? And is e-mobility a key instrument for increasing European competitiveness globally? To this end, the first two sessions of this triplet focus on the, so to say, state of the union from a geographic and sectoral approach, and with the crowning third exploring what we can expect from the EU institutions and member states. Today, we look to the geographic approach with a view of observing the challenges and so on by all but juxtaposing the different regions. Also, it will be an opportunity to highlight what is needed to further create the ideal context for e-mobility rollout. But before we move on, just 2 points. You'll be able to see the recording after the session. We're still talking to Netflix. I think I've made this joke every single time, by the way. So if you missed something, you can watch it again or indeed get in touch with every person on this call. And regarding the Q&A, you'll be able to put your questions into the chat box and we will see to address them during the session. So please feel as included as you wish. Let me introduce each of our superstar panelists with a direct question. Let's start with you, Aleksandra. A big welcome and thank you for joining our CharIN Tuesday. We have always appreciated your insights on behalf of the European Commission as Policy Officer at DG Move in the unit dealing with sustainable and intelligent transport. My question or questions to you, how do you perceive the level of e-mobility rollout across the EU and what are some of the geographic differences?
Maybe I would start with, first of all, I'm happy to join the webinar and I'm sorry that I cannot be seen, but just our system don't recognize this application of webinar, so I cannot, but yeah. First of all, I would just to maybe see what is the market now for e-mobility, for the sales of battery electric vehicles. And when you see in 2024 compared to 2023, we see in big markets like Germany, there was a decrease, a significant decrease, but however, it results the most probably from that in 2023, there was a big purchases before imminent stop of subsidies. Then in France, there was also a decline compared to the previous year, which happened in the context of declining automotive market. Then decrease in Sweden, certain decrease in Italy, Romania, Finland, and Spain. However, positive contributors in Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, Czechia, Greece, Croatia, Hungary, Cyprus, and Malta. So this is a good sign that there are also some of them countries which were at the beginning less major development of e-mobility. However, I would say that also there is overall market trends. We can see that overall automotive market experienced a decline, so not only battery electric vehicles, so we can see that there is also a shift overall, because petrol vehicles are also see decrease, diesel vehicles also see decrease. However, substantial growth goes to hybrid electric vehicles. So in the overall, we could also see that there is this fluctuations. However, there is serious significant losses are for internal combustion engines, and for electric battery vehicles still maybe trend is going slowly up. So just to see the market in overall, and we could also see that August this year was the first full month of increased tariffs for the made in China battery electric vehicles, which affected the registration of battery electric vehicles model. So I think that there is not only these big countries like Germany and France and the Netherlands, which were pulling the e-mobility. There are other countries which enter the game. And I would like also to show you from the point of view of infrastructure for recharging. So from the point of view of kind of other, like what is the base for the development of e-mobility. And I would like to ask to show the slide 1. And I hope that you can see this.
That was quick.
So the slide 1, if you can see, it shows the development of like what are the projects are financed by our CEF financial instrument, alternative fuels infrastructure facility, which was done from during the first cut-off date, so from 2021, and you can see here that all green is it is where it's enough already of stations with 150 kilowatts, and red where it is still open when there is nothing. So you can see like some of the projects will be realized till 2026. So it will be the like the image in the following years. But you can see that also that in Italy it's getting really well served. In Poland is more and more. Still in Romania there are big spaces to fill in. In Greece, in Spain is getting fuller. So just to tell you what is the progress. And if I ask you for the slide 2. So on the slide 2, it is station with 350 kilowatts. So this for the heavy duty vehicles. And here the situation is more problematic. Then you can see that even in the countries which are like major from e-mobility point of view, there is still a lot of gaps to be filled in. And we hope that with second call of AFIF, it will be done because we have like a special openings conditions for financing of recharging infrastructure for heavy duty vehicles. So it is just a short snapshot, as I see that this question is also put to other speakers, so I don't want to mobilize all the time. Thank you.
Aleksandra, this was brilliant, and thank you for setting the scene so well, because already a couple of questions are popping up with regards to the heavy-duty vehicles versus light-duty vehicles. Why is one more problematic? The 10T networks, and so on and so forth. But let me introduce our next speaker, Friedrich. This is not our first rodeo together, but the first one in the CharIN Tuesday. You're a Secretary General of the Alliance of European Car Dealers and Repairers, so a very interesting perception and perspective on road transport, that's for sure. A big welcome to you, of course, and I think I will ask the same question to you. Maybe if you can compliment also what Aleksandra said, or feel free, of course. How do you perceive the level of e-mobility rollout across the EU? And of course, geographic differences, very welcome.
Or I think on the geographic difference, I like to start with a short anecdote because this year we had our General Assembly in summer in Rome, which was very nice, and we had our Scandinavian members that were visiting the showroom of one of our vice presidents, one of the largest Volkswagen dealers in the Rome area, and what they said when they saw all the combustion engine cars standing in this Italian showroom was really, oh wow, so retro, which kind of shows what the difference is between countries. I mean, so general rollout, if you look at countries like Scandinavia, that's going really well. Really a lot of BEVs there on the road. If you look at countries like Germany, we had the decline, of course, with finally the canceling of the bonus of the finances that we had end of 2023, of course. I mean, that's a very obvious scenario. But if you look at other countries, and I really appreciate the optimism of Aleksandra here, but in many countries where we see a sharp rise, this rise comes from a very low point. Currently looking here on the side on the share of battery electric vehicles in Croatia, for example, in 2023, which was 2%. A large increase is still, in actual numbers, not a large increase. And that's why I would say we have areas where it works well, we have areas where it works okay, but we have south and also east of Europe where it is not going well. And this is something specifically facing the targets now from the fleet emission regulations we must address. And I think there, the only solution will be better coordination also at a European level, because we'll get to this later, but there are many reasons why people don't buy electric cars. They might be political, they might be technical, but what we can address, we need to address, because in my opinion, the rollout is not going well enough.
I am so tempted to give you the floor, Aleksandra, in response, but let me not be unfair to Petar. So Petar, you're head of strategic alliances, regulatory affairs and sustainability at AMPECO. Also not a first rodeo together. We've been together on CharIN Tuesdays. Yeah, sorry, Friedrich, we'll do some catching up in the future, I'm sure, with other CharIN Tuesdays. But anyway, Petar, like everyone else here, has a very good bird's eye view of the European landscape. But also reflection, what Aleksandra said, what Friedrich said with regard to the geographic approach. I wanted to take the opportunity, as AMPECO is a Bulgarian unicorn, at least I see it that way. We often hear about mobility rollout in Northwestern Europe and Central Europe, as was also alluded upon today. So in your view, what are the realities of Southeastern Europe when it comes to mobility rollout or e-mobility rollout? But of course, don't let yourself be constrained to that part of the European Union.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Glenn, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in this great company and discuss, quite a pertinent topic, which is the speed of the rollout of e-mobility, and a lot of target setting, a lot of regulation that we'll probably cover later on today. But there's been a lot of discussion whether it's a revolution or a transition, to e-mobility, and different people have different level of patience and different perspectives on how fast the transition should happen. But the bottom line that we see, and AMPECO, we are a software vendor that provides charging management platforms to CPOs across Europe and also globally. And what we see is that revolutionary transition, it's happening. It will be at different paces in different regions. But it's inevitable that more and more vehicles will become electric. Superiorly, they're there from a technological perspective, but also soon the economics will make sense as well. And we have, as a company, a good visibility of the EV charging market across all its use cases. So not only public, which is of course very important, but also, the commercial private setup or at home. And there's more data on the public. So, just to share a bit from a recent discussion I had actually right now in Sofia, there's the annual auto show, and increasingly more presence of CPOs there, and also, EV models being displayed. But actually, the public station to EVs ratio in Bulgaria is quite good. That's also because there are not that many EVs, which is connected to the purchasing power of a lot of the Bulgarians, and it's the case across Eastern Europe more generally. When we see different markets, we look at the Netherlands, France, for example, where our clients are seeing increasing utilization across their AC and DC networks. This is not yet happening to the same extent here, and it's going to be in several stages. It will obviously happen first in some markets and then hopefully spill over to others. We see it already in countries like Portugal. They're really picking up quite fast on the EV rollout, and with that comes the infrastructure as well. Poland is also pushing very strongly for incentives and more broadly ecosystem incentives that include the DSOs as well. So this ecosystem approach will be important to have not only a successful e-mobility rollout, but also increasingly more profitable. And I'll touch upon this later today as well, because one big question really for everyone is the profitability of this business. Probably we don't talk often about it, but I'd like to put this conversation today as well in my remarks later on. So all in all, it's a mixed picture. Certainly a lot of positives to take away from each market, and they develop at different speed, they develop with different pace, and we'll keep seeing that.
Thank you, Petar. Sorry, a classical mistake of talking when I'm muted. Actually, now that you've mentioned the point of profitability, why not jump into it? Because I'd like to reflect it a little bit with what Friedrich said regarding more coordination at the EU level. How do you see one linked to the other? Friedrich, maybe you'd like to start?
I mean, we have different levels of profitability, of course. My members sell cars and my members repair cars. We will get to that later, but for us, the profitability is we need an infrastructure. Nobody would buy any car if we didn't have roads or petrol stations, and the same goes for EV charging stations. And we have reached a certain market saturation. We have gotten all the early adopters. Now it's slowing down a bit. And you have already mentioned the purchase price. This is not just an Eastern European problem, that is the general problem. We have several other problems that also hold back consumers, but one essential thing is the network for charging. Again, to throw an anecdote in here, I was recently with an MEP actually in a more relaxed setting that said when we get a car from the driving service, we on purpose ask for internal combustion engines to go from Brussels to Strasbourg. Why? Because they want to charge in Luxembourg, but they can't because the lines are too long. I personally answered the lines for, getting gas is also long when you get into Luxembourg, but the point is, this is the perception that people have. And there I see, with very few exceptions, very few markets that do it really well. And there, I think we need to really evaluate how we can get photovoltaics and wall boxes done, but also how we can get, for example, in urban areas, low-hanging fruit like loading on streetlights, how you can have better distribution also in remote areas, which in many countries is still a problem. Specifically, I can always speak of Italy and Spain, where I know huge distances, investment is a problem. And that's why I say we need coordination and we need strong, quickly get rid of this phone call. And that's why we need clear rules. And this is my opinion, also why up here, which we will probably talk about later, left it unfortunately a bit too much to the member states. And there, for example, looking at, for example, interesting in your opinion, at Southeastern Europe, you have, I think it was also Bulgaria, but many of these countries have wonderful high voltage charging stations in the capitals, but Romania does not have a good rollout throughout the country. And that's the problem. Because Romania, with many inhabitants, these people count towards the fleet goals that we have.
Thanks, Friedrich. So, Aleksandra, I have to move to you on the question, or within the context of more coordination. And obviously, if you already have mentioned AFIR now, let's move towards AFIR. Of course, working closely together within the context of the Sustainable Transport Forum, the relevant subgroups, and so on. Do you feel that the comment on coordination is warranted? And do you think it is a question of we are in a transition or revolution, I think is what Petar mentioned, where we just need a little bit more time and a little bit more, let's say, effort? And who should this effort come from?
I think that the coordination is, according to me, necessary, and we in DG Move, we would hope that there is more kind of focus on the strategic point of view, strategic planning at the level of member states, for example, for extension of grids, in cooperation with like kind of planning where should be the stations. So there is a lot of help to public authorities to facilitate, like public authorities at the local level, for example, when they are planning, and to the industry who wants to invest with energy sector. Now at the European level, what we eventually can do is to, like what is already in like there is this electrification plan in route, so maybe there will be more of synergies and coordination between electrification transport policy and the energy sector. However, we should see what will be with the new commission, if there will be more finances to support building of the grids, or rather not. This we don't know. But for sure, there could be some kind of more strategic cooperation from the European Union with, for example, DSO network to extend the grid network and facilitate building of recharging stations, because it is a bottleneck, especially for heavy-duty vehicles.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
definitely. Peter, go for it, because that's
if I may jump in, because prior to my job at AMPECO, I was actually based in Brussels as well. So I have heard some of the discussions between member states as well when it comes to financing DSOs. And there are certainly some countries that would not support, some EU level financing, meaning, let's say, money from Finland going to finance Romanian DSOs. I've heard, the sort of feedback from some countries on that. But, I gave the example with Poland that was already, as part of a more comprehensive package that include also support for trucks, so electric truck purchase, but also the infrastructure. And the third pillar, which was very important, was the necessary grid works that need to be done. Now, it's not the case that all the time we have to reinforce the grid, and there's market solutions for it. We at AMPECO, we collaborate with different companies, and actually our clients do for site selection. So there's quite a lot of information out there that can help companies determine the most highly utilized site for their future infrastructure project. That's how they apply for the AFIF as well, understanding which location makes the most sense. Now, the challenge there really is that sometimes, those potentially profitable locations are not where the free capacity is, and that increases the capex. So for those situations, it would make sense indeed to have, support. In what way? It will be difficult to coordinate at EU level, so most probably it will be a national level measure.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree with you, and if I could make like take a floor, and in fact in Sustainable Transport Forum we are preparing now it's nearly ready the guidance for public tendering for public authorities, and then we put a lot of this focus accent on the coordination at the national level or local level with energy sector, with DSOs. So I hope that you can see like very soon this guidance, and it could be helpful. So at the Sustainable Transport Forum, we work with the experts from the whole sector of electromobility, and we prepare such reports which we hope can be helpful for the actors, especially public authorities.
Yeah, that's good news. Very good news. My question in this case is, and if anybody can take the floor, with regards to the solution of 10T networks, the core and comprehensive. They are a very strong guidance, obviously, for public funding allocation for strategic purposes. But do you think these are enough? And we're also looking here not at public charging, but also at home charging. Go for it, Friedrich. You raise your pen for it, or Peter.
Yeah.
Whoever shouts in first.
I can start.
Peter, you go first. You go first.
Yeah, I mean, we see that there's been several rounds, and as highlighted already, we saw the map. So there's been, rollout across those corridors. Hopefully, it will be also faster charging for light duty, not only for heavy duty. But the 10T approach and the related AFI funding is already leading to the development of international corridors. Companies are building consortia to apply and really take the network to the next level. We see, from an industry perspective, that there's some movement when it comes to the medium and heavy duty segment. But also, I wanted to highlight that increasingly more, we're talking about the integration of energy services to ensure that the relevant amount of power is delivered at the charging site. And I think this will be very important to have this common industry understanding that we might not need to have the full capacity at a given site to construct it, because there's a lot that we can do with load management. There's also the integration of batteries that is happening more and more. And sometimes this is a blocker, sometimes some projects are being cut off because there is not sufficient power at the site, despite that the project proposal is explaining that there will be dynamic load management implemented and so on. So this understanding that you can actually do a lot with a bit less power at the site if you employ energy services, I think this is something that has to be more implemented in the 10T projects.
Friedrich,
Pure.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Now you're fine.
Okay. Well, just from I agree, and I mean this is an entire thing that I must say everyone has to accept that. Of course, e-mobility does not work the same as the classic combustion engine. The charging takes longer. You have to see where to charge and so forth. This is all things that will change in mobility. But this is a problem specifically in our experience in the sales rooms. And there, in the showroom, we have done a study, for example, in Germany, that it takes 42% more effort to sell an electric car than an internal combustion engine, which is simply because customers have justified questions. How do I charge? Where do I charge? How long does it go? Questions you just don't have if you buy a diesel. And for that, I must say the focus on the 10T network sure is important, specifically for the rollout of heavy-duty vehicles, which is difficult in itself because there is a reason why the targets are also a bit lower there, because it is just much more difficult to electrify these. But for the customer, it is, I only repeat this, not important that you can say yes, but you have these along the road somewhere, but they care about, can I charge this here? Can I charge this there? Is it possible, very easy, maybe at a supermarket? Are there parking lots when I go to the city center in a rural area? Can I park there? These are the problems, and there you can ensure the customer. And one thing, we have one of our members who has been really successful by selling a complete package for selling electric vehicles, which means you buy the vehicle, you automatically get a good deal with an electrician that installs your photovoltaics, that installs a wall box, and you're set. And if we even had access to the functions of the car, we could even add a wonderful app that monitors your charging and so forth. And I think that's the right approach to get people to embrace electric mobility more. So we need the strategic rollout for sure as a basis, but we also need a rollout which really goes into the homes of the people, but also everywhere on the street. Again, with my lamppost charging, that you have visibly for the consumer the possibility, I can charge my car, I don't have to worry about range. Because among other things, but I think range is still the most thing that people care about and that people are worried about.
That's an interesting point, Friedrich, because I also had a reflection from some colleagues that said, you know what, range anxiety, absolutely. But at the end of the day, most trips by electric vehicles are done on a short distance. Not trying to go against the flow here, but actually more setting up the question to Aleksandra. What are your thoughts what's the progress like when we talk about range anxiety, do you believe, with consumers?
In fact, with range of like a anxiety range, we had we made a EU consumer like opinion polls, and this is improving. I think that people have they are more reassured, but again, it was opinion poll among the owners of battery electric vehicles. So I think that unless people really see that there is enough of network of recharging station along the TNT network, this can only reassure them. And I agree that it shouldn't be only the main focus, because people need also recharging at home or recharging on the streets. But this is important for like when people ask questions how I will travel long distance. So I think here we somehow think that that for light duty vehicles this market will like probably go on very well, but for heavy duty vehicles it is the challenge. Yeah, as my predecessor said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that probably with with the new models of cars in the future, maybe battery will be also more and more efficient. So this will be maybe less relevant to have such a network in the future. But now we need. Thank you.
I just quickly want to add anxiety. In psychology, as in this case, it's more of a condition rather than a truth. My German member is currently running a wonderful campaign called Electric is Easy. And to be honest, unless you really drive very fast along German highways, which you can, as you all know, you will not have a range problem usually in Germany. But you will have a range problem even driving slow in other countries. And the problem is that this range anxiety is not necessarily a truth throughout Europe, but it is a feeling that is really difficult to get out of the heads of people. Because if you tell them, yeah, but you can ride the car, I assure you this, and they stand between an electric vehicle and a diesel in our showroom, and the diesel is also significantly cheaper apart from that, it will be a hard sell for the electric vehicle. And that's why I'm saying the rollout in urban spaces and so forth more visible to the consumer, should not be neglected strategically for the uptake of electric vehicles, not for the strategic planning of, along the networks. That's of course important without saying.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe it should be like a kind of a network of, for example, like less, the density is important, no, even more than maybe the capacity, because if people say, okay, I can stop, even if I should wait, but I can, so I will not have a problem, then maybe it would be something which could make disappear this feeling of anxiety. Yeah. It's psychological, I agree.
Petar, you're nodding. Is that also an agreement from you? You're can't hear you, sorry. And you're not on mute either.
You should be able to hear me now.
Yeah, now.
Multiple devices, sorry. Yeah, I was nodding because actually I recently had range anxiety with a combustion engine vehicle. Because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna refuel soon. I can go on. And I start hearing those sounds that I should. But yeah, it's a psychological thing. And once you actually experience an EV and understand that it's a whole different way of driving and also recharging compared to refueling, it's natural with all the different options to recharge. So not only when you are at the highway, but also when you go shopping, when you go to, a public building even as well. It kind of goes away. And, we as a company, we have an electric fleet of about 15 vehicles right now. We take them for a week or two, to do everything, really travel outside Sofia here in Bulgaria, but also, within the city. And it's not a hassle, I would say, at all. But yeah, it's you have to get on the EV. And I think from that perspective, rentals are a good opportunity, and also at dealerships doing those test drives is very important to show really to the drivers what's the experience like.
A test drive, definitely. Yeah. I can't help myself, but I can also give you a little anecdote of when I had anxiety with my motorbike, and it's not an electric one. It's when I was driving for Austria, I was running out of petrol. Finally found a petrol station. The pump wasn't working. I turned around. I won't say the company, but there was an electric vehicle which was driven into the petrol station building. So that was my moment of anxiety. Anyway, there is one very interesting point which was raised before about grid capacity. Let's focus a little bit on the technological solutions, maybe also starting with you, Petar, but equally anybody, because these are also issues being dealt with within the Sustainable Transport Forum, is the case of smart charging and bidirectional charging. How much of a solution is that for the problematic behind grid capacity?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, dynamic load management is a way to limit the power that goes to individual stations, and at the site level, you can control that. But that's the first level of it. It kind of builds on a more aggregator level, let's say, where you can put those chargers in a group. We call them flexibility assets, for example. And a CPO can simply utilize this group of chargers as a single capacity unit, and then put that on the ancillary services markets where they can, be used as capacity in case, let's say, a gas station goes down. Of course, we're talking once you have really a significant capacity, and mostly that happens in a private charging setting. But still, this is something that already happens now. And building on top of that is the third layer that I see. So the first one is really on the site level. Second one is when you aggregate and participate in the market. But the third one is really when you look at, day-ahead prices, for example, and build a pattern for the driver, which is linked to the prices. So let's say you have cheap prices tomorrow at the same time at 1 p.m. well, you're gonna connect that cheap price with a very cheap tariff as well for the driver, and that will create really a bigger uptake of renewables. It will also, because of the market order of how the electricity works, right? But also it will make sure that you don't have peaks at certain times of the day. So it will be new peaks that you have to deal with, but it will be also with the appropriate capacity that's at the network level. So those three, I think, are all part of it, and there's a lot of, a lot of different services that could be offered in the energy space, not only vehicle to grid, but a lot can be achieved also with V1G. So V2G will be great once it happens at scale. Hopefully, that will be soon because there is benefits to it. But even right now, with what we have as a technology toolkit, we can achieve a lot today already.
Thanks, Petar. Maybe one of the other two panelists, Friedrich or Aleksandra, how do you see V1G and V2G as a healthy business case?
Yeah, I think it is important, this connection. But yeah, and we hope it will develop. Yeah.
Friedrich?
I mean, for us, as I said, sorry?
Go ahead.
For us, I mean, it's a good selling point because it's also a possibility to add further service, as I mentioned before, to the customers. Because bidirectional charging can help, can also help, increase reduce the total price of operating the vehicle for the consumer, can help give more planning to the day, to get also used to using the electric vehicle, to think about the charging. So in the uptake, it's rather good. Additionally, for us, what we're currently exploring, but I cannot give you any result there, is that car dealers often have not just one car, but an entire fleet standing around. And there, of course, we can also help a lot, being basically a battery for even a small part of certain areas. Because the car dealer is always located somewhere, has a lot of space, and the cars in itself are a battery, literally. However, for that, we're currently exploring with some battery testers and battery manufacturers, because we keep getting the warning that it might deteriorate at least some types of batteries over time, which of course for new vehicles is not ideal, and for used vehicles even worse, which already are very, very hard to sell. So for us, we see the business case and we see the opportunity, but I mean, we already heard from Petar, this is a bit of a avenue we still have to explore while going down.
Thanks.
If I can add, it's of course this is something that we would wish be directional, and I think it would ease electricity sector a lot. However, for this, it's needed that, like, it would be maybe it should be massive, and then it means that all people who charge at home have such an opportunity, but also people who live in the apartment blocks, who need to leave their car in cover parking places. A lot of them cannot even charge there. There are some blockages to install charging devices there. So I think that there is still a lot to be developed, that it really takes a proper, level scale, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. That also answers the question about the time needed to really have that level of rollout. But this, now talking about time, Petar, you'd mentioned to me about one of the challenges to the rollout is wait times. What do you mean with that?
So wait times, when it comes to the grid connection, is a big issue for CPOs. We hear it with different levels of warning across the EU. In some countries takes more than 18-20 months to connect a charger, and that's certainly something that keeps the the general rollout of EVs as well, a bit slower. What we see really, I mean, it could be that governments are more agile, and we see it more and more at the local level. So let's say at a certain neighborhood or like a local municipality, there's more flexibility. We see that, but I think more broadly, it will be also connected to the margins of CPOs, because when you build a business case for a certain charger, you take into account that you will be operational in, let's say, 12 months. And every single month and every single day, every single hour perhaps, is a missed opportunity to capitalize, which makes it slower to get return on investment. And that's a big subject for a lot of network operators right now. We've seen some good examples of connectivity when it comes to solar and wind. Perhaps those can be also implemented to EV charging as well.
Thanks, Petar. This brings me actually to the question of this being addressed maybe on a more broad policy approach. You'd mentioned, Aleksandra, before that you are bringing together or putting together a guide for the public procurement side, so to say. Is there something that would help from the policy side to address what Petar has mentioned?
For sure, that could be some kind of from the public authorities that they could, for example, facilitate to the investors this kind of waiting time. So how much time it requires the permission to install the charging station. Then they could already, for example, prepare with DSO some places. Said, okay, the grid issue is already solved, so it can encourage, it can motivate investors to come. So I think a lot of this bureaucratic red tape could be like shortened, and this, I think, can be done. Of course, there could be some requirements at the EU level, but I think the most important is this action at the local, regional, national levels.
And is this something that industry can help to push, to facilitate, to create guidelines, to ensure that there is a quicker uptake with the use of industry's help, so to say?
I think that industry can simply somehow kind of cooperate with authorities, try to get into contact and maybe encourage to have a strategic view, because I think that like what we see from the ground and when you were working on this report is that the public authorities very often they lack capacity in terms of knowledge as well, about this market and how to plan well. And for example, in some countries, the public authorities use choose the companies which, for example, don't have enough of experience, or for example, they are like kind of false. For example, they enter market after they resell this to somebody else. So there is a lot of kind of lack of knowledge at the part of public authorities. That's why we also prepare this guidance, maybe less on national level. So I think that industry maybe can help public authorities to, for example, to be trained. I could imagine,
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a good signal to send to industry. So we can look at a more coordinated approach, especially for the licensing, grid connection, and so on and so forth. But I see Petar has gone offline. I hope it's not because there's a car charging next to him. Sorry, couldn't help myself. But let me maybe ask you, Friedrich, first, and then you, Aleksandra, the chicken and the egg situation. for vehicles and charging stations. That old chestnut, as they say. Do you think we've overcome it?
I don't think that chicken and egg is a good example for this, to be honest. You cannot have electric cars, but I mean, you cannot have electric cars without charging stations, so that they have to be there first. And the rollout of charging stations that needs to be continued across the board is the absolute prerequisite. And I don't see that we have overcome it. I was just looking up for just the other day, the numbers, for example, for Italy. They actually started from a relatively high number a couple of years back and have just stopped, as it seems, compared to other countries. And now the numbers of battery electric vehicles per charging station in Italy is huge compared to the Netherlands. So, I mean, how can you sell an electric car if you say, okay, but charging will be very difficult? Paired then, of course, with the problem that electricity in Italy is also, I think, among the most expensive, if not the most expensive in the EU. So for me, this is not a chicken and egg thing. You need the charging station and then we can sell the car. Right.
Aleksandra, you wanted to say something, yeah, please.
Yeah, I would agree that I think it's still not totally overcome, as we see that there are a lot of gaps, and it is only on TNT network, but people also need recharging stations in urban areas and next to their home on the streets. So I think it is still a lot to be done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Petar, you were briefly offline.
Yeah, but if I can just quickly jump in here, because I think I heard most of the discussion on this question, whether it's still chicken and egg situation for vehicles and charging. I think this is slowly being resolved, and let's not forget that if the vehicle manufacturing business is among those with smaller margins, I mean profit margins as an industry, right? EV charging, margins are even thinner over there right now. Companies who are in EV charging are betting that they'll be profitable in a few years' time, certainly not next year. And in the meantime, they're trying to limit as much as possible, all the different expenses that they would have that would slow down their business. And yeah, they're relying on high utilization, so that means that the reliability of the chargers is very important, because if they're not working, they're not generating any profits. And if those chargers aren't profitable for a long period of time, then they will simply, probably be acquired by someone else, which is what we're seeing right now. There's quite a lot of consolidation in the industry right now, exactly because of this. So it's also about the patience with, the growing pains of an industry, which is still quite new and is maturing in front of our eyes. And I think very soon we won't be talking about this chicken and egg debate, simply because there will be sufficient chargers out there. And it will be about getting the European vehicle manufacturer in a competitive situation against the Chinese competitors who are offering very inexpensive vehicles across all different segments. So I think that will be the bigger challenge coming up, not whether there will be chargers or not. I have trust in the charging industry that they work with. So let's make sure that we get also affordable vehicles to all Europeans.
Thank you, Petar. Actually, you set the floor for my next question for Friedrich. Apart from what has already been discussed, Petar, B2B, definitely, but what about, as you highlighted, B2C? When you have, let me put it differently. What is the showroom experience like beyond the one that you mentioned in Italy? What do consumers say when they look at potentially buying an electric vehicle?
I mean, technology growing in front of your eyes, as you said before. We have talked about range anxiety. Another thing, however, that consumers are also concerned about is that the technology is new to them, and they really feel that, let me do the analogy, it's like buying a smartphone, and somehow they feel like, well, but what if I buy it now? Will my battery or something be outdated in 2 years? Is it maybe better to wait? Is it maybe better to, for now, get an internal combustion engine car and revisit this in 10 years when the batteries have evolved? And this is really the issue that a lot of people have. And this gets so much worse when you go onto the used vehicle market, because there the people also say, yes, but the batteries are the most expensive part of the car. And what happens if this battery now breaks down? Because at the moment, we are currently trying to roll out a good program for our customers. We're exploring with certain suppliers for good battery testing so we can do proper state of health assessment. We've actually been lobbying Commission and Parliament on this as well, that we actually should have a European standard on battery testing, and also on under which condition a battery needs to be changed and things like that. Which also, I mean, I presume from DG Move, you're probably also working on the roadworthiness proposal still. I presume will be in there, or at least should. This is something that the consumers really care about. But what is also important is that these are modern vehicles and they have the advantage of modern solutions. So I just mentioned now the range problem and also maybe the technology problem, but you have nowadays also a lot of technologies where you can help the consumer, maybe even remotely along the road. And that can be a good selling point, that if you have an electric vehicle, but you also get the service from your car dealer and your repairer along the road if possible. For that, we would of course need access to in-vehicle data and functions, but this is also a possibility. And that is something, an all-around service, that is something that convinces customers.
Thanks, Friedrich. Aleksandra, do you want to respond?
Yeah, in fact, we work on standards, but it is more standards like communication protocols, technical standards, standards which will connect, which will concern wireless charging. But here you talk about batteries, and here I think it is more of another DG matter, but probably it would be beneficial, you know. So I think all kind of standards which allow to have like kind of easier interoperability would be beneficial, even for such things like adapting recharging infrastructure to be accessible for disabled people, you know. So I agree.
Thank you, Aleksandra and Friedrich. But one of the important points, of course, is what industry is very often looking for is a seamless experience of charging. Charging shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be many steps. That's why also the element of plug and charge. Petar, maybe quickly to you about your thoughts on plug and charge.
Yeah, before I mention that, actually, I just wanted to quickly respond on the topic of in-vehicle data, because, you know, more broadly from a software perspective, we see that companies just have to make a better use of not only the charging data, but all type of data about the battery as well, because it's indeed very important. But looking at charging data, that can help set KPIs to understand uptime, utilization, so that the next wave of adopters really have a seamless and reliable charging experience. That's what matters. And we have to leverage, you know, that data. We are literally sitting on a lot of data that, you know, can be better utilized, and we see now more and more, you know, movement in that direction. When it comes to plug and charge, you know, that opens up a complete new use case application, you want to name it, of EV charging, because that's also connected to how payments are being processed as well, and it's taking this, you know, this experience of recharging a vehicle to the next level. We were exhibiting in Berlin at the major industry trade show called ICNC, and that was in September. We were doing some demonstrations with, exactly plug-in charge. Actually, we had a demonstration on that. It was very fun to see because you just go and plug in, and that's the whole demo. It was quite simplistic. Behind it, of course, there's a lot of work behind an ecosystem of players who are collaborating to make this a reality. And we see more and more that it's being, utilized as a solution by the industry compared to the other alternative, which was, again, a similar type of functionality. It was called auto charge, but it comes with a bit more flaws and security concerns. And we see the adoption of plug-in charge increasingly growing. So this is certainly something that makes it easier for the drivers, alongside roaming and everything else that comes with it.
Oh, there are definitely two very interesting points, one on data and one on the ease of use, and about three actually, roaming, but which is maybe part of the ease of use. Really, how much do you think that would help consumers turn more towards electric vehicles and take away another form of anxiety, so to say?
In the end, it's all about consumer experience. The Tesla has shown us the way on this one. We must simply admit it, not just because they also invest strongly into the rollout of charging infrastructure, but also because they have made a vehicle about an entire experience by itself. In that sense, revolutionizing a bit what we think about vehicles nowadays. And you can see that you have Chinese brands that at least try to copy it. And the connected vehicle is the future. And I think there really we can, from the simple things like predictive maintenance up to calibrating assistant driving systems over the air to consumer needs, give many things that make people generally more comfortable in their car. And again, there specifically for the electric vehicle market, we recently had a conversation about charging through an app, because we've also been advocating for this, not charging through an app, but finding charging points over an app. And that is something, using an app is nice for the younger people, but most people just prefer to have it in the car. So generally the connected vehicle, to which everyone has secure but significantly free access, can absolutely help and create a consumer experience that is just nice, where you can charge where you want, where you can go where you want, where you can calculate where you want to go. And that, I think, is very important.
I just received a question regarding the 2030, 2035 targets. I think I'll leave that for later, a little bit later, for a more conclusive point. But wanted to see a little bit more on the point, or maybe let's do this simply. Now that I've got industry here, Aleksandra, maybe a wish list from your side, what industry should be doing more or better?
Yeah, the industry, automotive industry can come out with the models which are less expensive. This would be the objective, but I know it's difficult. And then also maybe I will raise here the issue of fire safety, because this is always very often the blockage to welcome EVs in some covered parking spaces. So there could be more kind of research on the battery, that there is easy access to battery for the fire brigades. So this is from the point of view of autos, how the autos are constructed. Yeah, the industry, can maybe more kind of focus on what consumer need, how they can encourage people to choose these autos, how through application, through different kinds of technological inventions. So this is for automotive industry and for the investors in building recharging infrastructure. This could be also something easy to use. For example, if it is recharging infrastructure at homes or in the covered parking spaces. So I think innovation can help to encourage people. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly.
If I may also add here.
Sorry,
Please, Friedrich, go ahead.
I should moderate better. Friedrich, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, very glad to hear about the fire safety thing. We actually brought forward an INI report to Parliament also just last month. Well, last month, yes. Simply because we have the same problem for occupational safety and health in our workshops. I mean, we do our utmost best. We developed our own standards. But in the end, we all know that there is this danger, not only since that ship was on fire for several months or something. So glad to hear, because honestly, this is something we also see as a problem, just from a point of responsibility also towards our employees.
Thanks for that, Peter.
Klenke, can I add something?
Please.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm also happy that you mentioned this, and just wanted to say that in Sustainable Transport Forum we prepared a report on the fire safety of EVs and recharging points in covered parking places, and we do this, and it will feed also the more kind of formal guidance that are prepared in the framework of EPPD directive, and the draft of this, like the report, will be shown during the Fire Safety Week at around 21 or 23rd of November. I think it will be organized in the Parliament. So yeah, we take this seriously, even though it's a very complex issue and to be developed. Thank you, and sorry for.
No. Perfect. It's also good because we're working on this, looking at this. I think it's an issue that gathers significant attention, not least on an international scale. Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my sort of impression here that this is not normally a topic that I hear in the context of the discussions that we have with our, clients that operate across Europe, simply because, we haven't really seen any issues when it comes to charging and fire safety. Just looking at some figures, this year so far, we've successfully completed over 5 million charging sessions on our platform with our European clients. And this number is essentially doubling every year what we see so far. And what we employ is, fault detection, predictive maintenance algorithms that can prevent any of this from happening, unless, of course, it's a malicious act, physical act. So from a charging perspective, we really don't see any issues there. So I'm just, really, I want to say surprised, but it's interesting to hear this perspective as well, because this is not something that, normally would be in my on my desk, so to say.
Okay, good to know that Peter, as you're also a member of CharIN, we'll have a chat about what's going on there. Maybe to turn around after having asked Aleksandra what industry can do, maybe a couple of points that you might want to raise on top of what you raised before with regard to what more from the policy side you want to see. What's your wish list looking like?
Well, Christmas is coming, so let's hear.
So
from the policy,
go ahead, Aleksandra. If you want to add something from the policy side, sure. Then we can ask Peter or Friedrich.
The policy side, we want like a proper implementation of AFIR first, and especially for heavy-duty vehicles, but we will prepare the revision of AFIR in 2026. We are preparing now kind of market readiness report for heavy-duty vehicles, so we can like adjust also our policy from the legislation point of view, following the market and what is needed.
Thank you. Maybe also, sorry, just maybe to come back on the reflection of what Friedrich said at the beginning with regards to creating more coherence, as is the case, or not the case, as you were saying with AFIR, that there's too much power in the member state hands. Is there something there that you'd like to see more from member states being able to, member states transferring the decision making towards a more European approach? Aleksandra, question was for you.
What should be transferred to? Could you repeat it, because I thought that
sure, sorry. No, the question was also in reflection of what Friedrich said before with regards to there being too much decision-making capacity when it comes to e-mobility rollouts with the member states. So geographic incoherence, let's say, from a policy side. Is there something that you'd like to see the European Union have more strength in, not least in light of the review of AFIR?
I think I cannot say now more because the new commission is forming, so we don't know what will be real plans, but we would like maybe like from our DG Move point of view that like member states take this very seriously in terms of planning, and they need to submit national plans for AFIR, and that there is really like a substance and there is a strategic approach at the level of member states. And we see that in some countries, even those who are like as less developed market but are catching up, we can see that there is a strategic approach, at least I see in Poland, but I don't know how it will be implemented really with the different actors. So I think that we think that now the implementation is important, because like AFIR is quite new, and there will be revisions. It should be implemented first, no? But we are working on the related acts from AFIR on standardization. So these are all like all the follow-up.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that, because we see right now quite a lot of differences with the implementation when it comes to the national access points, which creates a lot of overhead for companies like us to create different reporting mechanisms, and also for clients who operate in different countries to abide by the rules of the different access points. So that's, quite unfortunate that countries have started to go again in different directions, despite it being a regulation. But there's a lot more to implement, not only, the national access points and everything has to do there. So really hoping indeed that there's more harmonized implementation.
Thank you, Peter. Friedrich, did you want to add something on policy desires? No, you're good.
I mean,
all right.
Not on this specific thing.
Okay. Well, we are coming close to the end, and also maybe now an opportunity to ask for the one takeaway for the audience. Maybe if you want to also reflect the question that was put with regard to the targets, 2035, up to you. But yeah, Aleksandra, maybe we start with you. The one takeaway.
One takeaway. The need for cooperation and coordination between the actors is the most important, and planning and strategic point of view approach.
Thank you. Petar?
Yeah, I would say my takeaway really is that the EU has an actual leadership when it comes to EV charging technology. We see it across the board, not only on the software side, but also on the hardware side. European companies are leading the way, and that's not very common to see, I would say. So let's make sure we build around the single market and really use, the leverage, the expertise of European companies to deliver the best possible EV charging experience out there, and then help really translate that to the rest of the world as well.
Thanks, Peter. And Friedrich?
Yes, I can only echo that, and I would even add, I mean, we are laying the groundwork for individual mobility for the next 100 years to come, probably. In that sense, while it is a transition, it also is a revolution, and there we need a very comprehensive and coordinated approach. So we need good rollout, we need good vehicles. I would like to also add again the access to vehicle data, which will be very important to also further develop new products, new services, and so forth. And there we can, as Europeans, as Petar said, be at the forefront or not. I think that's the choice we're currently making.
That's a very good point. I mean, we are in a paradigm shift, and I even had some questions with regards to bilateral agreements on technology and how the EU can be at the forefront, but maybe worth another CharIN Tuesday. Do look forward to seeing you all again. So big thank you. But before that, we have a couple of small announcements with regard to the next CharIN Tuesdays. Bear with me, part 2 next week, beyond road transport, aviation, maritime, and so on, and agriculture actually. What direction is it going? That's I see I already have the panel sorted, but we'll talk. And then part 3 about will EU politics and policy for mobility stand its course or change direction. Also a very good point to discuss the ambitions of 2035. And also, lo and behold, in Latin America, we have another CharIN Tuesday, which are much more organized agenda presented on the slides. So if there is interest to join that, you'll find the links on the CharIN website. So on that note, thank you very much again to all the panelists and everybody who joined to listen in. And yeah, look forward to speaking with you offline or online next time. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
My pleasure.